The ballroom felt too bright, like the lights were trying to bleach out the awkwardness. A cold paper cup of Starbucks sat forgotten on a silver tray near the stage. The ice melted into a sad brown puddle. Lena's phone kept vibrating in her apron pocket, 3 buzzes in a row, while her manager hissed, "Stop hovering. Just serve." Across the room, a man in a clean navy suit sat alone at table 12, hands folded like he was waiting for someone who never showed. People glanced at him, smiled politely, then turned away like he was furniture. He watched their mouths move. He watched them laugh. He watched a deal happen without him. And when Lena accidentally met his eyes, he didn't look angry. He looked tired. Like he'd been ignored in rooms like this his whole life. Then a teenage girl stepped out from the side door with a borrowed black blazer that didn't fit right, lifted her hands, and signed one sentence so clear the whole night shifted. Lena Alvarez had learned how to disappear on command. It was a skill you picked up fast when you cleaned other people's messes for a living and tried not to bring home your stress to a 1-bedroom apartment in Queens. She moved through the Midtown Hotel like she belonged to the walls. Black apron, hair pinned tight, shoes that pinched by the end of every shift. The kind of uniform that made you invisible to the guests and loud to the managers. She'd been doing banquet work on and off since her daughter, Maya, was in kindergarten. Now Maya was 16, all elbows and stubbornness, with a part-time job at a bodega after school and straight A grades she guarded like they were oxygen. The hotel was hosting a private event that night for a tech company's strategic partnership dinner. That's what the email had said. Lena didn't know what the company did, only that the guest list had names that sounded like buildings and that the tips would be better than usual. Her manager, Brent, had called it a clean night. No drunk wedding guests. No screaming toddlers. No cake disasters. Just rich people talking about money and acting like stress was something they invented. Lena had smiled and nodded. She needed this shift. Rent was due in 9 days. The Con Edison bill had a red stamp on it. The fridge at home had a half-gallon of milk, eggs, and an open box of baking soda that Maya swore absorbed smells even though Lena had never seen it do anything. She'd been trying to stretch everything. Stretch food. Stretch patience. Stretch her body between double shifts and a sleep schedule that didn't make sense anymore. That afternoon, before she left the apartment, Maya had asked, "Are you coming to the ASL showcase tomorrow?" Lena had frozen with one sock in her hand. The question landed like a pebble dropped into a quiet room. Small, but it made ripples. "Tomorrow," Lena said, already knowing the answer would hurt. "Yeah. It's at school. It's not long. I'm presenting with my group," Maya said, trying to sound casual. Trying not to ask for too much. Lena had looked at the calendar on the fridge, the one with the free pizza coupon clipped to it. Tomorrow was Saturday. Tomorrow was also the day Brent usually called people in. "I'll try," Lena said, the same 2 words she said about everything she cared about. Maya's face had stayed neutral, but Lena could read her daughter the way she could read a room. The smallest shift in the eyes. The way she nodded like she'd expected disappointment and was already packing it away. Now, hours later, Lena stood behind a curtain near the ballroom doors, holding a tray of water glasses while Brent gave last-minute instructions. "No mistakes tonight," he said, voice low and sharp. "Important guests. Very important. They're talking numbers that could buy this whole hotel. Smile, move, don't interrupt." Lena nodded with the others. She didn't care about buying hotels. She cared about paying rent. She cared about Maya not seeing the final notice on the bill. Inside the ballroom, the atmosphere was polished and tense. The kind of tension that didn't look like anger but felt like pressure. The tables were set with white linen and tiny centerpieces that looked expensive and pointless. The air smelled like lemon cleaner under layers of perfume. Lena started her loop with the tray, moving between tables, refilling water, picking up empty plates. People talked in tight circles. They laughed at things that didn't sound funny. They checked their watches like time was something they controlled. At table 12, a man sat alone. Not lonely exactly, more like he had chosen solitude because it was easier than fighting for space. He had a name tag clipped to his suit jacket, but the letters were turned slightly away from her. His phone sat face up beside his plate, screen dark. His posture was careful. His eyes moved constantly, tracking mouths. Lena didn't think much of it at first. Plenty of guests came alone. Sometimes they were assistants. Sometimes they were investors. Sometimes they were people who didn't like crowds. But what stood out was how other people treated him. A woman in a bright green dress leaned toward him for half a second, said something. Lena could tell by the quick shape of her mouth, and when he didn't respond, the woman's smile stiffened. She turned away and joined a louder conversation at another table. Two men stopped near his chair, glanced down like they recognized him, then kept walking. The man watched them go. No reaction. Just the smallest exhale through his nose, like he'd expected it. Lena felt a pinch in her chest she didn't have time to name. She walked past with the tray. The man looked up at her. Their eyes met. His expression wasn't dramatic. It was simple. Tired. Not asking for pity. Just aware. Lena held his gaze for a beat too long. Then Brent appeared at her elbow like a shadow. "Stop staring," he muttered without moving his smile. "Just do your job." Lena's face went hot. She nodded and walked away, but the man at table 12 stayed in her mind like a song you couldn't shut off. Later, during the first course, Lena went back to clear plates. The man's dish was barely touched. When she reached for it, he lifted one hand gently, palm out, not rude, just pausing her. He pointed to his ear, then shook his head once. Then he tapped his chest and moved his hand in a small motion Lena didn't understand. A gesture. A language. Lena swallowed. "Oh," she said softly, like speaking quieter would help. "I'm sorry. Do you need something else?" He looked at her mouth carefully, then gave a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. He picked up his napkin and wrote 2 words on it with a pen he pulled from his pocket. "No problem." Lena stared at the letters. Her throat tightened, sudden and sharp. Because the words didn't mean he was fine. They meant he didn't want to be a problem. There was a difference. Lena wanted to say something better. Something that didn't feel like pity. Something normal. But behind her, Brent called, "Lena. Table 3 needs wine. Now." Lena nodded quickly, grabbed the plate, and walked away, her face calm even as her thoughts raced. She hated that she'd been pulled away like the moment didn't matter. She hated that the man had probably seen it happen 1,000 times. The night pushed forward. Speeches began. A projector screen came down. A man in a grey suit walked onto the small stage and started talking about strategic alignment and market dominance. The room responded like a machine, nods, murmurs, polite laughter. Table 12 stayed quiet. Lena found herself watching that table whenever she could. The man's attention stayed locked on faces, on mouths, on tiny expressions. He was trying to gather information the way a person tries to catch rain with their hands. At one point, the speaker on stage made a joke. The room laughed. Table 12 didn't. Lena's phone buzzed again in her pocket. She stepped into the service hall to check it. A text from Maya. "You forgot the rent envelope on the counter. Also, can I come to work with you tonight? Just for a little. I finished homework." Lena stared at the screen, fingers numb. The rent envelope. Her stomach dropped. That cash was from 2 weeks of tips. She'd meant to deposit it tomorrow morning. The second message hit right after the first. Maya wanted to come to work. Which meant she wanted to be near her mom. Or she didn't want to be alone. Or she wanted to see what Lena's life looked like outside the apartment. Or all of it. Lena swallowed hard and typed back. "No, Mija. It's late. Stay home. Lock the door. I'll handle the envelope tomorrow." She stared at the word Mija after she sent it. A habit. A comfort. But it also felt like distance. Like she was pushing Maya away because she was too tired to let her in. From inside the ballroom, applause rose. Another speech. Another segment of the night that would change someone's life. Lena turned back toward the doors, tray in hand, and saw table 12 again. The man sat alone while the room celebrated around him. His eyes were on the stage, but his face said he wasn't really part of what was happening. And in that moment, Lena understood something simple and heavy. It wasn't just that people couldn't hear him. It was that they didn't want to do the work to include him. Lena didn't have the words for it. She just had the feeling. The same one she got when Maya asked her to come to something important and Lena said, "I'll try." She went back in, moving like she belonged, but her mind was no longer quiet. Because she remembered Maya's ASL class. The way Maya had come home one day and signed something at the kitchen table, hands moving fast, eyes bright. The way she'd said, "Mom, it's not just gestures. It's a whole language." Lena had smiled then, proud and tired at the same time, and said, "That's nice, baby." Now she looked at table 12 and felt the shame of how small her response had been. The speaker on stage said a name Lena couldn't catch. People turned their heads toward table 12 briefly, like they were checking a box, and then they looked away again. The man didn't move. He just sat there, hands folded, the napkin with no problem tucked under his water glass like it was his role in the room. And Lena, standing with her tray and her buzzing phone and her overdue bills, felt the night tightening around something that hadn't happened yet. Something human. Something small. Something that could change everything without being magic. The night didn't slow down after the applause. It sped up, like everyone suddenly remembered they had places to be and money to make. Chairs scraped softly against the floor. Servers moved faster. The hum of conversation turned sharper, more focused. Lena refilled water glasses with muscle memory, but her thoughts kept drifting back to table 12. The man was still there, still alone. People passed him with polite nods, the kind you give when you don't want to stop. She caught herself circling his table more than necessary. Once, she almost said something and stopped. Another time, she straightened a fork that didn't need fixing just to stand there for a second longer. She hated that she felt awkward. She hated that she didn't know what to do. Mostly, she hated that doing nothing felt easier than trying. Her phone vibrated again. "Maya, I know you said no, but I'm already on the train. I'll wait in the lobby. I won't get in the way. Promise." Lena closed her eyes for a second. Her first reaction was panic. Brent hated unexpected things. Kids were a liability. Rules were rules. The second reaction came slower and heavier. Maya didn't usually push like this. When she did, it meant something mattered more than fear. Lena typed back with shaking thumbs. "Wait by the elevators. Don't talk to anyone. I'll come get you." She slipped the phone back into her pocket just as Brent passed her again. "You good?" he asked, scanning the room. "Yes," Lena said automatically. "Stay sharp," he replied. "We're heading into the real part of the night." Lena didn't know what the real part was supposed to mean. She only knew her heart was beating faster than the pace of her steps. The lobby felt like a different world when she stepped out. Quieter. Cooler. The air smelled faintly like polished marble and hotel coffee. Maya stood near the elevators, backpack still on, hair pulled into a messy ponytail. She looked small under the high ceiling. "You said not to come," Lena whispered, pulling her aside. "I know," Maya said. "But you sounded tired. And I didn't want to sit at home thinking." Lena sighed. She wanted to scold her. She wanted to hug her. She settled somewhere in the middle. "Stay with me," Lena said. "If Brent sees you, we're both in trouble." Maya nodded quickly. "I'll be invisible," she said, then smiled a little. "I'm good at that." The words stung more than Maya probably intended. They walked back toward the ballroom together. Maya slowed when she saw the room, her eyes taking in the tables, the stage, the people in suits. "Big night," she murmured. "Always," Lena said. Maya lingered near the side wall, watching quietly as Lena went back to work. For a few minutes, nothing happened. It was just another fancy dinner. Another night where people talked past each other. Then Maya's gaze locked onto table 12. She tilted her head slightly, like she was listening to something Lena couldn't hear. She watched the man's eyes. His posture. The way he tracked faces but stayed disconnected. "Mom," Maya said softly when Lena passed by again. "That man, he's deaf." Lena nodded. "I figured." "They're not including him," Maya said. It wasn't a question. Lena hesitated. "I know." Maya's jaw tightened. "Why is he here then?" Lena didn't have an answer that made sense. Another speaker went up on stage. This one talked faster, like he was running out of time. Charts flashed on the screen. Numbers. Logos. The room leaned forward. At table 12, the man sat straighter now. This part mattered to him. You could see it in the way his focus sharpened. He was reading the slides, reading the faces, trying to connect dots without sound. Maya took a step forward without thinking. Maya, Lena whispered sharply. I just want to help, Maya whispered back. I can interpret. Lena's stomach dropped. You can't just, this isn't. I know, Maya said. I won't interrupt. I'll just stand near him. If he wants. Lena looked toward Brent. He was deep in conversation with another manager. This might be the only window. Be careful, Lena said quietly. Maya nodded and walked toward table 12 like she belonged there, like she had every right to exist in that space. The man noticed her immediately. He looked up, cautious. Maya stopped a few feet away, lifted her hand slowly, and signed a simple question. Hello. Do you want interpretation? The man's face changed in an instant. Not dramatically. Just a small release, like someone letting go of a breath they didn't realize they were holding. He nodded. Yes. Thank you. Maya moved closer, staying beside his chair but not touching it. She angled herself so she could see the stage and his face at the same time. The speaker kept talking. Maya translated quietly, her hands steady, precise. Her face mirrored tone. Serious when the numbers mattered. Curious when questions came up. Neutral when it wasn't relevant. Lena watched from across the room, her chest tight. People started to notice. A woman at the next table frowned, then leaned over slightly, trying to see what was happening. One of the men who had ignored table 12 earlier paused mid-sentence, eyes narrowing in thought. The man at table 12 started to engage. He signed questions. Maya interpreted them softly to a nearby executive, who looked surprised but answered anyway. The conversation shifted. Slowly. Like a door opening that no one realized had been closed. Brent noticed then. He walked fast toward Lena, his smile thin. What is that? He hissed. My daughter, Lena said before she could stop herself. Why is she? He's deaf, Lena said, gesturing subtly toward table 12. She's interpreting. Brent looked at the table. Looked at the man. Looked at the executives now leaning in, listening. This wasn't approved, he said. I know, Lena said. But look. Brent hesitated. His eyes followed the energy at the table. The way people were paying attention now. The way the man at table 12 was no longer invisible. 5 minutes, Brent said finally. If this turns into a problem. It won't, Lena said. She didn't know why she was so sure. At the table, Maya kept working. Her hands moved with confidence, but Lena could see the nerves in her shoulders. This mattered to her. Not because it was impressive. Because it was right. The speaker on stage wrapped up. Applause came again, softer this time. The room buzzed with side conversations. At table 12, the man signed something to Maya, slower now. Thank you. You did not have to do this. Maya smiled, small and real. Everyone should be heard. The man nodded, emotion flickering across his face. Not gratitude alone. Respect. Lena felt something loosen inside her chest. For the first time that night, she didn't feel invisible. And she didn't feel ashamed of being seen. The room didn't go back to normal after that. It pretended to, but something had shifted, like a hairline crack in glass that only some people could see. Maya stepped back once the speaker left the stage, her hands lowering slowly, like she was afraid to drop the moment if she moved too fast. The man at table 12 thanked her again, this time with a longer sentence, one that made her blink and swallow before she nodded. Lena didn't ask what he said. She could tell by Maya's face it mattered. Brent let the 5 minutes stretch into 10, then 15. He didn't say anything. He just watched the room like someone recalculating risk in real time. Lena stayed busy, but her body felt tight, wound too close. Every laugh from the tables sounded louder than it should have. Every glance toward Maya felt loaded. She kept thinking about consequences. About how easily this could turn. One complaint. One guest annoyed by a disruption. One manager deciding rules mattered more than people. That's how it usually went. The man at table 12 was no longer alone. Two executives had pulled chairs closer. Phones were out, not scrolling this time, but showing documents, graphs, notes. Maya stood between them, interpreting back and forth, her voice low when she spoke, her hands clear when she signed. Lena noticed something else then. Maya wasn't performing. She wasn't trying to impress. She was doing the same thing she did at home when Lena was overwhelmed and the words came out wrong. She was building a bridge. Lena leaned against a service station for half a second longer than she should have. Her chest felt heavy. Pride mixed with fear in a way that made her dizzy. She thought about all the times she'd told Maya to keep her head down. To not draw attention. To be careful. Advice that came from love but also from survival. She wondered how much of herself she'd taught her daughter to shrink. The conversation at table 12 grew more intense. One of the executives frowned, then nodded slowly. Another asked a question, sharp and skeptical. Maya interpreted it, then turned back to the man, who signed calmly, confidently. His movements were precise. There was no hesitation now. He had been waiting for this moment. For access. For someone to listen. Lena caught fragments as Maya spoke softly. His saying the current model ignores a key accessibility market. His saying this isn't charity. It's revenue. His saying you're leaving money on the table. The word money landed differently now. People leaned in. Not out of politeness. Out of interest. Brent's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then at Lena, then back at table 12. His jaw tightened. He walked away without saying anything. Lena's heart dropped. She followed him into the service hall. What's wrong? She asked, keeping her voice low. Brent stopped walking. He looked tired suddenly. Older. Corporate's on the line, he said. They're watching the guest feedback live. Lena felt her throat close. And table 12 just submitted a comment. About inclusion. About accessibility. About how we handled tonight. Lena braced herself. Is that bad? Brent looked at her for a long second. It depends who you ask. They stood there, the hum of the ballroom muffled behind the doors. Lena's mind raced ahead to worst-case scenarios. Getting written up. Losing shifts. Explaining to Maya why standing up for someone cost them stability. She thought about the rent envelope on the counter. About the red stamp on the bill. About how close everything always felt to falling apart. Why didn't you stop her? Brent asked, not unkindly. Lena swallowed. Because no one else was helping. Brent sighed. You know I can't protect you if this goes sideways. I know, Lena said. He nodded once, then walked back inside without another word. Lena stayed in the hallway, leaning against the wall until the coolness seeped through her shirt. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them together, trying to steady herself. This was the breaking point. She could feel it. That invisible line where you either go back to being small or you accept whatever comes from being seen. She thought about her own mother, cleaning houses until her knees gave out. About the things she'd never said because no one had asked. About how silence could become a habit that felt like safety. Inside the ballroom, the energy peaked. Voices rose slightly. Not angry. Focused. Intent. Maya caught Lena's eye from across the room. For a split second, fear flashed across her face. Lena forced a small nod. You're okay. Keep going. Minutes later, the man at table 12 stood. The room noticed immediately. People quieted. Not fully, but enough. He didn't speak. He signed. Maya translated, her voice steady but soft. He says this partnership doesn't work unless accessibility is built in from the start. A pause. He says his firm won't invest unless that changes. Another pause. Longer. Lena felt her breath catch. That was it. The line in the sand. The executives exchanged looks. One of them rubbed his chin. Another exhaled slowly. The silence stretched. Then one of them nodded. "Let's talk numbers," he said. The room exhaled as one. Not celebration. Recognition. Lena's knees felt weak. She had to grip the edge of a table to stay upright. Maya finished interpreting and stepped back, her shoulders slumping now that the adrenaline was fading. The man turned to her, signed something slower, more personal. "You changed everything." Maya shook her head slightly, eyes shining. "No," she said quietly. "You did. I just helped people listen." When the meeting finally broke, people moved differently around table 12. Slower. More deliberate. Like they were aware they'd missed something important and didn't want to repeat the mistake. Brent approached Lena again. "Your daughter," he said carefully. "She's impressive." Lena nodded, her throat too tight for words. "We'll talk later," Brent added. "About scheduling." It wasn't a promise. But it wasn't a threat either. As the guests began to leave, the man from table 12 came over with one of the executives. He looked directly at Lena this time, not past her, not through her. Maya stood between them, suddenly unsure. The man signed, and Maya translated. "He wants to thank you for letting me help." Lena shook her head. She didn't need permission, she said. She just needed space. The man smiled at that. A real one. Outside, the city waited like it always did. Loud. Indifferent. Full of pressure. But inside Lena, something had cracked open. Not into chaos. Into truth. By the time the ballroom emptied, the night felt thinner. Like all the heavy things had been said, and what remained was cleanup and consequence. Lena wiped down a table that was already clean. Her body was tired in a deep, honest way, not the frantic exhaustion she usually carried home. Maya sat on a folded chair near the wall, shoes kicked off, rubbing her wrists like she'd just finished a long exam. Neither of them talked much. They didn't need to. Some moments didn't require processing out loud. They just needed space to settle. When Brent finally came over, it wasn't with his usual clipped tone. He looked like a man trying to decide which version of himself to use. "You're heading out?" he asked. "Yes," Lena said. "We're done here." He nodded. Corporate followed up. Apparently that guest, his more than just a guest. Lena didn't respond. She wasn't interested in titles anymore. "They're continuing talks," Brent said. "And they specifically mentioned how tonight was handled." Maya looked up. "Look," Brent added, rubbing the back of his neck, "I can't promise anything big. But I can promise this wasn't a mistake." Lena nodded once. "That's enough." On the subway ride home, Maya leaned her head against Lena's shoulder. The train rattled through tunnels, familiar and unforgiving. "I thought I messed up," Maya said quietly. "You didn't," Lena replied. "I was scared." "That's different." Maya stared at the opposite wall. "I don't like when people act like not hearing means not understanding." "I know," Lena said. "I didn't always get that." Maya smiled faintly. "You're getting better." The apartment smelled like stale air and leftover rice. The rent envelope still sat on the counter where Lena had left it, a silent reminder that nothing magical had happened. Bills didn't disappear. Stress didn't evaporate. Lena put the envelope in her bag, finally. Tomorrow, she'd deposit it. Tomorrow, she'd keep going. Her phone buzzed as she kicked off her shoes. An email. From an address she didn't recognize. She opened it slowly. It was short. Direct. Written like someone who valued clarity. It thanked Maya for her professionalism. It thanked Lena for making space. It mentioned that the deal was moving forward, contingent on accessibility consulting. It asked if Maya would be interested in a paid internship over the summer, working with their inclusion team. Remote. Flexible hours. Lena sat down hard on the couch. Maya read over her shoulder, her breath catching. "Is this real?" "I think so," Lena said, voice barely steady. "It wasn't a lottery win. It wasn't a miracle. It was an opportunity. Earned. Specific. Real." Maya laughed softly, then cried a little, embarrassed and unashamed at the same time. I just wanted them to listen, she said. Lena wrapped an arm around her. That's usually how change starts. A week later, nothing looked different from the outside. Lena still worked shifts. The city still moved too fast. People still ignored each other on sidewalks. But small things had shifted. Brent gave her steadier hours. No explanation. Just a schedule that didn't feel like punishment. Maya spent evenings practicing, not just signs but patience. Learning how to navigate rooms that weren't built for her values. Learning when to speak and when to wait. One afternoon, Lena sat in a coffee shop between errands, watching steam rise from a cup she'd already paid for. She thought about that night. About how close she'd been to saying no. About how easy it would have been to stay invisible. She realized something then. The win hadn't been the deal. Or the email. Or the money. The win was choosing not to look away. Choosing, just once, to let someone be fully seen. Life didn't turn perfect. But it turned honest. And sometimes, that's enough. If you've ever been ignored in a room where you mattered, or stayed quiet when you wanted to speak, you're not alone. Share your story. Someone might be listening now.